Laney Davis is a longtime friend and former advisor to Michael Cohen. He prepared Cohen for his congressional testimony back in 2019. I think that was you in some of the footage we just showed. It's sitting right behind him as well. But he joins me now. It's great to see you. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you. And seeing that testimony and remembering the night before preparing him for the testimony is quite relevant as to what he's going to face tomorrow.
Yeah, that's such a good lead-in for here. Let me just start with on a personal note. I mean, you are a longtime advisor. You're a friend. How is he feeling about testifying tomorrow?
He's confident that he is telling the truth. And when you have the truth and you don't worry about telling the truth, it gives you confidence no matter what the attack is. He's confident that he's got the facts and they're fully corroborated by others. So all he's going to be doing, no matter what the attack is to say something fully corroborated by other people's testimony, including friends of Mr. Trump, documents, text messages, emails.
He's a pretty combative. I don't think he'd mind being called combative. He's pretty combative. He's not exactly a shrinking violet. We've seen that in the courtroom. We've seen that on Twitter and other things. What tone should we anticipate from him tomorrow? Well,
again, that's relevant to what we've been through already. And I do remind people when he testified on February 27th, 2019, he wasn't in front of a courtroom with a judge there to protect him from unfair attacks. Mm-hmm. He walked into a hearing room, live, national and international television, under oath. And on the wall behind Mr. Jordan, the ranking member, with Reverend Elijah Cummings, the committee chairman of the House Oversight Committee, was a sign, liar, liar, pants on fire. That was the beginning of the most vicious partisan attacks, including by Mark Meadows, the future chief of staff. And what did Michael do? And I must say I helped him have the fortitude to do it. Keep his voice down, tell the truth, and most importantly, Jen, own that he lied and did evil deeds, as he said, for Donald Trump for 10 years. And he said when he opened his testimony, I have no excuses. I'm ashamed. I'm here to tell the truth. That's what I think we'll see in the courtroom this coming week.
So it's very interesting. I just want to pause on that for a second, because we have seen his combative nature. I mean, he has been reprimanded by the judge even for some of the things he's done on TikTok and how outspoken he's been. And you're saying that's not what you expect tomorrow.
That's not what I expect. And I'm virtually certain, because he knows that he acted out of passion, out of reaction to what he was being accused of in the courtroom, and he won't be doing any more Twitters, and he'll be the Michael Cohen that you saw in that testimony. And we've talked repeatedly recently, and I know that he'll be telling the truth, and he'll be telling the truth calmly, no matter what they say, because he knows everything he says is fully corroborated.
Let me ask you, I mean, there's a lot we've learned over the last couple of weeks. We knew a lot already, but we have learned details from David Pecker, from Hope Hicks, and others. Do you expect we'll learn new things we didn't know before during the testimony tomorrow?
There may be some things. Remember, I was in the room for the last 2 or 3 years with 2 sets of district attorneys, and I know that the corroboration and the detail backing up Michael is what people don't recognize. But I want to remind you of something else. This is not just Manhattan DA Bragg, who Mr. Trump attacks for political motivation, and his supporters attack this case. Remember, it was Donald Trump's federal prosecutors in the Southern District of New York who wrote a public memo, and they wrote, Donald Trump directed, the word is directed, Michael Cohen to make these payments. This is after his denial that he didn't know anything about it. His own prosecutors not only said he was directing Michael Cohen to make these payments to Ms. Daniels, but he also faced a case that his own prosecutors said impaired democracy, not about hush money for sex. His prosecutors in a public memo said this case is about buying people not to tell the American people before they vote for president to be silent. So his own prosecutors described this case as an important case. And so the Trump supporters who disparage it are in the face of his own prosecutors and what they said when they charged Michael Cohen when he did the time.
Which is such an interesting point. I want to ask you about one detail, because one of the things Madeleine Westerhout talked about, and you and I both know, she sat right outside of Trump's office. That office, the outer oval, you see everything, that she set up this meeting between Trump and Michael Cohen. And a key part seems to be him confirming the details of that conversation. Do you expect we're going to learn more about that tomorrow?
The details of Michael's reaction to a sitting president of the United States in the Oval Office writing a check from his personal checking account, which, by the way, we put on TV on February 27th, which I thought would be almost the end of the hearing. It was so shocking, yet it was a big yawn by the Republicans. A sitting president writing a check to implement a crime that someone is about to go to jail for. I was imagine a Democratic president writing a hush money check. So yes, we're going to learn some details if Michael, on direct examination, is able to put some color behind his sensation when he went to see the president of the United States. And the word was reimbursed. Rudy Giuliani, his own attorney, said it's a reimbursement for the hush money. It wasn't legal fees. Mr. Trump knew there were no legal services. So that may be the shocking detail that Michael can provide.
Well, that's such an interesting one. You don't bill legal fees like this. I think you know this well. There's something, I mean, part of preparing for testimony like this is, of course, preparing for what people are going to attack you on. And of course, you know, for Michael Cohen, you know, there's a suggestion, I would expect the defense to do this in cross-examination, that he committed perjury because he denied under oath that he had committed tax evasion after he pleaded guilty back in 2018. He's addressed this to some degree. I've asked him about this, but how is he going to handle that tomorrow?
Let me say it plainly. I was there when he was forced to plead guilty on a Friday night. The prosecutor said, you have till Monday morning, or we won't only indict you, we will indict your wife for tax fraud. And the notebook that he kept of all of his records in a bank account right in his building isn't criminal tax fraud. So he knew at the time he was being overcharged. He was a victim. At that point in time, Mr. Trump wasn't being charged. And then when he finally had a chance to say he was coerced into doing that, he finally said so, and taking the penalty for not, in a sworn statement to a judge, admitting to a crime that, as he said to me, I lied about a lie. Now it's time for him to clear the air. His criminal defense lawyer said he was coerced, and now he told the truth.
He cleared the air. But in the 20 seconds we have left here, when last time we spoke, you said you think Trump will go to jail. Watching this trial over the last few weeks, you still confident in that?
Well, I really don't want to second guess a jury. I think there's evidence to convict him. And I think he can't pardon himself at some point. He can be incarcerated. I think at the time I might have been a little bit angrier. Now I'm more reliant on the criminal justice system. I trust the jury system. I would not favor putting him in jail. I am in favor of him being accountable. Let me repeat, he can't pardon himself no matter what happens.
Because of the state law here.
It's a state crime. He cannot pardon himself for a state crime.
Lanny Davis, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really excellent preview of tomorrow, as a lot of people will be watching. Appreciate you joining me.